Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. Appreciate you coming out today. I'm about to share my screen to get started. Thanks, Bill. All right. So, everybody, I'm excited to have you out here this afternoon. My name is Ray Batra. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Shift Up here in Detroit. I'm really excited today to talk about training schools, right? Building basically new learning models for the future effectively. So I'm going to go ahead and let's dive in. So first of all, I want to clarify, who is this talk actually for? We had a huge number of people registered. I know we'll see how many people actually trickle in. But basically, first priority is sort of curious startup folks, the people who have really no expertise or background in higher education and training. Secondly, this is still relevant as well for people who do have a background in higher education and training, the geeks like me, but I'm prioritizing those who don't have a background. Also, a slight disclaimer, I was diagnosed with COVID on Monday, so I'm not totally with it. So I'm feeling pretty good, enough to do this, but just it's not going to be 100%. So bear with me. So who the hell am I to be giving this talk, right? I think it's helpful to provide some context as to why I'm qualified to be here and sort of what my background and perspective, what I'm bringing to the table in order to do this talk for you. So as I mentioned, right now I am CEO of a company called Shift Up, and Shift Up is building a training school, a modern training school for the future. I'm going to talk more about it later in the presentation, but essentially we're building something called a learning gym, which is a physical space and community designed for online students. And so it's a new model that we're using to build effective and affordable training. But outside of Shift Up, I've actually been deep in this space for about 10 years, going all the way back to high school. Prior to Shift Up, I worked at two venture-backed startup companies out in Silicon Valley. One's called the Entangled Group, which is a venture studio focused on higher education and training. So that basically means they have one arm that consults with institutions and companies, and they have another arm that builds companies in this space, and they sort of use the two to inform each other. I also previously worked for EdSurge, which is a media company, kind of like TechCrunch. For those of you who know TechCrunch, essentially a media company that covers the future of education and education technology. Before that, so I have some background in policy, worked for the US Secretary of Education while I was in college, did some digital innovation work for the University of Michigan, as well as some substitute teaching, both in Detroit and a teaching fellowship when I was in San Francisco. And finally, I've just kind of geeked out about this stuff for a long time. When I was in college, I actually worked really hard for a couple of years to try to get the University of Michigan to launch a new college campus in Detroit. So that's what this thing on the right, it was like a proposal that I did. So my goal ultimately is to modernize systems of higher education and training, to basically build a new national system. And that's my area of expertise. You can, then there's like my personal Twitter if you want to geek out about this stuff. All right, and then also, just to give a little bit deeper context about why this stuff really matters, at least to me. I think a lot of this boils down to like, what's the purpose of education and training? And those things are different, right? Training is not necessarily education, although some people might argue that. In my view, I labeled this talk Building the Training School of the Future. It was originally called Building the University of the Future. So a lot of things that you're going to find here about training schools are actually relevant, if not more relevant, for the future of higher education and universities more broadly. But yeah, so this is an actual screenshot from maybe 5 years ago, I think, maybe 6 years ago. from a friend of mine in college that he had posted on Facebook saying, as you can see, like, good thing we go to college to learn and develop, never having to worry about such silly things as grades and GPAs, which of course is not true, right? You go to college and the only thing that actually really counts in terms of whether you get your diploma is how well you've done with your grades and GPA. Even if you have a poor GPA or if you got kicked out of school, but you might have learned and developed as a person in so many other ways, whether that's taking care of a family or working, or whether that's being an entrepreneur and doing lots of side projects and building your maturity, there's some tension there, right, about what I think in terms of the purpose of education to develop us as human beings that isn't actually recognized in a system. So for me, a lot of the why comes down to building a system that really better incentivizes and rewards what I think is important in education. And that's ultimately what I want to go towards. Training, on the other hand, is a lot less theoretical, I would argue, is a lot more about let's help people get jobs, raise their income, right, whatever that is. So there's some nuances there. There are some nuances there. All right, so before we move any further, I actually want to start with a activity, a challenge. So I need everybody on this talk right now to, if you have a computer or if you have a pad and pencil, if you still have those things, or paper, take it out. If you have a computer, bring out a Word document or some area that you can type some text in. If you have a notepad near you, get your pen, get your pencil. And this is a picture of a sandbox, because what I want you to do is to take 5 minutes. I want you to take 5 minutes, and I want you to imagine that you are in a sandbox and that you can completely redesign and reconstruct your ideal learning experiences, right? Think like either a training school or a college in some cases. And I want you to write out, right? What does that look like? If you could design college or a training school from scratch, what should that look like today? Take a few seconds, go and locate that. Then you're gonna have 5 minutes to do this. So now I'm gonna start the timer here. I'll give you 15 seconds to get ready. And we're going to get started here. 5 minutes again to write down, if you could redesign and redraw your ideal learning experience in a college or training school today, what would that look like? Let's go. I see some questions. Yep, that's a good idea. Let me put it. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. Try to write as much detail as you can. Think about the problems or the pains that you've experienced in the past and how you could redesign those to be different, to be better for future students and yourself. For those of you who just joined or are joining, again, there's you have 2.5 minutes here to pull out a piece of paper and pencil or a Word document on your computer or something else and draw your ideal learning experience. Like if you could redraw your higher education or training experience from scratch, what would it look like? Just do this exercise for about 2 minutes more. Again, if you just joined us, hold tight for about a minute. We're in the middle of an exercise and we're going to keep going. "30 seconds left. Think big. You can draw completely from scratch. No need to have semesters or GPAs or anything else. Blow it all up." All right, and we are out of time. Cool. So it's really hard and awkward for me to like do this when I can't see anybody, but that's okay. So we're going to move forward from here. I did want to ask if you are so inclined, email me your responses. I'd love to read them. You can send them to my emails up there, ray@shiftup.tech. Shoot me just text only if you don't mind, just in the email body. Don't do attachments. And we'll feature our favorites on social media. And we may actually even use the top design ideas in our actual learning gyms, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. So send me your response. Cool. All right, so now we're going to get into the meat of the presentation for today. So I always like to start with any presentation generally with takeaways. So here's what you can expect to kind of get out of this presentation, if nothing else. 3 takeaways for today. First, those who proclaim that the future of higher education or the future of education is online are wrong. The future is blended, and we'll talk about that. Second, ShiftUp, which is my company, is creating a critical network layer of what we call learning gyms around the country. We're going to talk about that. And third, some of the biggest opportunities in the space are or will be in soft skill training, purpose and motivation development, a lot of the non-sexy industry training, and also with synchronous online training modalities. Again, that's a lot of words, buzzwords. You're not going to understand what that is right now, but you will in a few minutes. All right, so let's start with just kicking it off, right? Many people believe that the future of learning is online, and they're wrong. Why are they wrong? Well, they're wrong because there's a fundamental truth, which is that learning online is, at its essence, a lonely experience, right? It's removed. And this is something that, not just online education, but distance education more broadly. So distance education and digital education is not a new thing. Distance education has been going on for 40 plus years, right? People used to mail in courses back in the 80s. And they used to do there's different technologies, sort of mail-in courses. There's been TV courses. There have been throughout the time when the internet started getting in there. There was initial video conferencing, and then it got better. And then there's AR and VR, and there's these different pieces. And every time that these different technologies get introduced, right, the world is like, oh my gosh, college is dead. We're going to be, the future of learning is online. And that's not true. And the reason why, or a reason why, is that people by far, right, prefer learning in person. And so there's a lot of data on this, and sort of there's mixed in some ways, but some of the most reputable data, especially through an organization called EDUCAUSE, for those of you who are in the education industry, you might know this. But essentially, there's a spectrum. It depends on kind of who exactly you're looking at, but anywhere from roughly like 60 to 93% of people, depending on which bracket you're looking at, prefer either fully in person or blended, part online, part in person. So what is missing? Well, what we're realizing is that at my company, Shift Up, we are here to take the best of online, which includes the flexibility and the affordability, and also the scalability of online learning, and combining it with the best of in-person, which includes, in many cases, the connection and the community and the camaraderie that comes from being with others while learning. And we've created something called a learning gym. So this is live in Detroit. We have our first learning gym, which we opened officially last fall in October. Is based in the Detroit Center for Design and Technology on Woodward. That's sort of right by the McDonald's and the Hopcat area. It's inside that building. And so learning gyms are essentially physical spaces and communities for online learners and online students. Also, for those of you who joined, again, I'm slightly sick, or I've been sick for over a week, so bear with me as I go through this talk. So what is a learning gym exactly, right? And how does it work? So, sorry, let me back up a little bit. So learning gyms are physical spaces and communities for online students. What that basically means is it combines a few different value propositions, right? We do not create our own content. We believe that there is enough content that is available for free or low cost that is higher and higher quality every day that exists, right? These include through whether it courses on Coursera, Udacity, edX, Udemy, lots of other things. So we don't create our own content. We work with existing content providers. And we actually we don't build our own spaces either necessarily. We work with underutilized spaces, networks of them across the country. And so we sort of focus on providing the best in-person experience and support possible for online students. And this includes not just the physical study space, but also the peer communities. So you're there with people who are learning the same types of things that you are. And we're focused right now on digital skills. These include like coding, design, marketing are sort of the three main areas that we do right now. So physical study space, peer communities, we do live events, lots of live events, social events, networking events, educational events. We provide everybody with their own personal trainer, which is basically somebody who's there to keep you motivated, to keep you accountable, help you set goals, help you get unstuck. So you have that sort of piece to it. You have live coaches, so different nights of the week. We have coaches who are specialists in your area. So like Mondays could be web development, Saturday mornings is design, Saturday afternoons is marketing, right? And you could have different sort of coaches there, almost like when you walk in, the feeling is sort of like office hours meets a group study session, right? So you have a coach there, and they're there to help you and tutor you and answer, get you through your questions. But you are going through at your own pace through a curated resource and syllabus of projects and resources for you to learn at your own pace. And then finally, there's lots of assessments that you can take to get feedback, and then you can get connected to employers as well at the end to help you get a job if you pass an assessment. So how it works again exactly is, you walk in, as opposed to, let's say, you log on to a course on Coursera and it's 10 o'clock at night, you're trying to learn Python by yourself in your bedroom, you're hitting the computer on the wall because you're so frustrated, you can't get unstuck. And it's just generally a really shitty experience, and it's kind of lonely, and it's not fun, right? Many people enjoyed learning experiences, or they enjoyed the possibility of good learning experiences. But here, right, when you walk into a learning gym, you get an onboarding process where you get to create a personal relationship with one of our staff members to deeply understand your needs and goals. Then you get your own learning roadmap, which is basically a syllabus of resources and projects. Then you get started self-paced with your support from your personal trainer, your coaching and study sessions, your events that happen all the time. You can also sign up for one-on-one mentorship, either at a higher premium tier or otherwise, and then your feedback. Finally, you can take your assessments. If you pass your assessments, you can get connected to employers. And I will say that you don't actually have to do 1 through 3 in order to do 4 and 5. So somebody could come to us already knowing the skills for UX design. They could take the assessment through us, and they pay a fee for that. And they basically like pass out of it, and they can get our certificate and then get connected to employers. So, all right. So something unexpected. I'll keep it brief, but I'll basically say that I think at a smaller level, what we call like a micro level, we're solving this problem of, I guess like loneliness and isolation in online learning. But at a bigger level, in some cases, we're really in part solving a challenge in our society more broadly, which is around lack of community and lack of isolation for many Americans. That they're looking for sort of new third spaces, quote unquote, kind of areas outside their work and areas outside their home to be able to connect deeply with other individuals. So people are coming to our learning gym, they sign up and they start for the training services. And in some cases, they stay, or the reason why they're staying will become more about the people in the community and the relationships that they're seeing in person, which is a really exciting thing for us to see. All right, now the big elephant in the room, probably for many of you might be wondering, well, what about this COVID thing? Not that just that I have it, but like more broadly, we actually found out last week that our space in the Detroit Center for Design and Technology is no longer opening for the rest of the year. So we have been online for the last 3 months since March 13th or so. And it was obviously a big question at the beginning as to how all this was going to work out online. We did move everything online. The only thing that was not online is obviously the physical space itself, but the other value propositions around the live coaching, the virtual office hours, virtual study session hours, the learning roadmaps, the employer connections, assessments, etc., that all remained, and we did the events virtually. So the good news is that it actually, we had a slight dip at the beginning, but beyond that, we've grown substantially, actually, so the last couple of months. So coming out of this, we will have virtual and in-person memberships going forward. But I do believe deeply, and we do have evidence here from many of our members, at least, that that people are staying on because they do anticipate having the in-person coming back, and I do think, right, that our differentiator will be that we will have these spaces on top of it. So there will be in-person and online. All right, so yeah, the vision, right? I mean, my goal is nothing less than having a learning gym in every neighborhood, right? Starting across the country and then eventually around the world. I think this is the blended model that will become the future, and we're not going to be the only ones, and I recognize that. But hopefully we can do it very well and serve our users. All right, so I'm going to change gears a little bit. So this is less about us and Shift Up, and now more broadly about the industry and basically about important trends and models to watch and opportunities in the space. So some of you may know these, but probably many of you don't unless you've been in the industry for a while. But when people think about redesigning education and higher education, there's a few key buzzwords to know and trends. So one of the most important trends, in my opinion, is something called competency-based education, also known as CBE. So competency-based education basically means granting credit or certificates based on mastery as opposed to time. So like historically, if you go to college or you go to a boot camp or not a boot camp per se, if you go to college or if you go to a traditional school, you do have to pass some final exam usually with a C or better, but you have to show up, right? You have to be there for 16 weeks in your seat at the lecture hall, right? And if you don't attend, you might get knocked off some points for not attending. Or if so basically that's what we call a time-based model. Competency-based education is what we're doing, which is decoupling those ideas of the time that you're spending equals the mastery that you're getting out of it. So you can come through Shift Up or an online course that's asynchronous, and you can go through the whole thing in 2 weeks if you can do it, right? And if you can master it, and then you prove yourself, you take the assessments, you get assessed, and then you can get connected to employers. And heck, you don't even need to have 2 weeks. You could come to us, pay the assessment fee, take the assessments, and then get connected, and that's totally fine. That's competency-based education in a nutshell. Blended learning is kind of what we've been talking about. So basically it means not fully online and not fully face-to-face. So anything in the middle is what you might call hybrid learning or blended learning. Many universities this fall are going to be doing some element of blended learning. Personalized learning and adaptive learning. So these are words. Personalized is a huge buzzword in the education field. Often, it's kind of given it a really bad rap, but basically personalized education or personalized learning at a broad high level essentially means it's like an entire way or organization of organizing a learning experience that's designed around an individual student first, as opposed to thinking about like a cohort-based standardized model. Right? So it's a very broad umbrella term. Adaptive learning is a specific type of technology. It's a software, essentially software platform that when you start learning on an adaptive learning technology, if you get something right, it'll probably speed you up faster through the course progression. And if you get something wrong, it'll take you backwards. And so it kind of adapts to how you are progressing. And you theoretically could do adaptive learning without software, but the general use is almost always software. Income share agreements are a financial mechanism in the future of training that you should, that if anybody who's building a training school or interested in that should be well aware of this. So essentially an ISA, an income share agreement, is a way to finance education that requires that typically is set up so that there's no payment up front whatsoever. And instead of traditional student debt, where you take out a loan and you're paying a fixed monthly payment, when the repayment begins, right? Whether that's immediately after your program or 6 months or a year or whatever. Instead of a fixed monthly payment that you're on the hook for and can't discharge in bankruptcy and such, you sign up for an income share agreement, which you pay back a percentage of your income for a given period of time. And the benefit of that is that it fluctuates up and down, right? So if you end up getting a job that is lower than you wanted, let's say you're working at a coffee shop, right, when you just spent X tens of thousands of dollars on your college education, or hundreds of thousands of dollars, you're not going to be paying back as much. You're not on the hook as much as if you, let's say, got a job as a senior software engineer. So it's a flexible sort of income-based repayment mechanism. Micro-credentials and badging. This is essentially a trend that basically, I know less about micro-credentials and badging, but basically what it's saying is you're getting certified for tiny bite-sized micro-credentials, right? Tiny bite-sized pieces, as opposed to a giant bachelor's degree that you have 120 credits that's hugely mixed between, right? So the micro-credentials could theoretically then be connected to employers a lot more easily. And employers could say, hey, I need somebody who knows specifically Excel or specifically SQL or some sort of thing, and then you might be able to say, hey, I've got a micro-credential in this, and I'm able to do your job. All right, apprenticeships. So apprenticeships are definitely trending backwards in interest right now. There's a lot of interesting things going on there. Mobile learning as well. People are thinking about, like, can you create entirely training experiences you can do entirely on your phone? Talk about that in a little bit. And then open educational resources. These are all like the free and not always free, but I forget the technical definition. It's a little tricky, but it's like remixable, I believe. They're essentially usually free and remixable online resources, though they're not entirely always free. So you can use those to make the education that you want. And then finally, game-based assessments. So these are like if you could do SimCity, right? If you could play a video game and get assessed better than the SAT. There's some really cool companies that are doing stuff like that right now. Let's see what's going on. Whoops. All right, I know this stuff is kind of dry a little bit here, so I'm gonna try to speed through it more quickly, but I hope it's useful for some of you. Some interesting models to watch. So there's two colleges in particular in the US that are like most well known for being highly innovative and generally quality. So those often are Southern New Hampshire University and Western Governors University. They're some of the largest online college systems in the US, right alongside University of Phoenix, although the University of Phoenix is for-profit. Southern New Hampshire and Western Governors are nonprofit. But they use competency-based education, they use self-paced stuff, and there's a lot of cool things going on with them, so keep your eye on them. There's a couple great, Jump Cut is a company that's doing, think of it like Hollywood-style online learning. So they make really, really high-quality, engaging online courses. I encourage you to check it out, see what they're doing. Outlier is doing kind of something similar, but they're actually trying to attach college credit to it, whereas Jump Cut is not. Reviture is an interesting apprenticeship company. Encourage you to check them out. Trilogy basically runs boot camps they partner with colleges and sort of use their brand and then run boot camps with their brand and share the revenue. They've grown super, super fast across the country. They got like 60 or 70 locations, I think. Straighterline is a low-cost, credit-bearing online competency-based credit-bearing thing. So they're a very interesting one that have been around for a bit longer. Nexford University is brand new, very, very new. I'm going to keep my eye on them in the next couple of years. They've got like a $99 a month, I think, or $100 a month accredited MBA level course structure. The African Leadership University is well known and also is doing a lot of interesting things. I believe they're in Rwanda. Quantic is a mobile first MBA and accredited. I don't remember if they're accredited or not, but I believe they are. Anyway, they have free courses and they have also a select MBA program as well that basically is paid for by employers on their other side. So you can get an MBA for essentially free. University of the People has completely free, minus like a few $100s that you got to pay for assessment fees or whatnot. Completely free, accredited online university. So check them out. Founders and Coders is kind of like Shift Up, based in London, nonprofit that does really cool work as a boot camp, sort of a self-directed boot camp that has had some really cool results. Re-Up is a program that basically is watching, or basically they work with universities that have lots of students who have dropped out of school, who basically whenever a student drops out of school, right, the student loses because they've got debt and they have no degree, and the school loses because they don't have that revenue coming in again. So Re-Up works with schools. They track down the students who've dropped out. They get them to re-enroll, and they provide supports to help the student actually succeed and get through college. So it really becomes a win-win-win. Very interesting business model. And they're based in Toledo, not too far from here. Well, they're a distributed team, but their CEO is in Toledo. And then finally, sort of Make School and Lambda School are a couple of many types of sort of boot camp and college alternative programs that I'm interested in, but there's many others too. They basically pioneered, I wouldn't say pioneered, but they were the ones who, Lambda School popularized the income share agreement in the training world. Make School is like a longer program and is more of a college alternative for like your traditional, 18 through 22-year-old crowd, whereas Lambda School is more on adults. But they're doing awesome things. Oh my gosh, I need a break, but that's okay. Let's see here. Cool. So key opportunities in this space. So if you are an entrepreneur and you're trying to figure out, okay, building the training school of the future, where could I fit in? The areas that aren't done yet. My suggestion is that there are sort of 4 areas here that you probably want to pay attention to and start digging into. One is this area that basically soft skills. So these are all the non-technical skills. People think about training is just the technical skills, and the reality is that I forget the stats. I meant to get them before this presentation, but again, wasn't feeling the greatest. The vast majority of challenges that a lot of these schools face is not helping people learn technical skills, but it's usually the non-technical skills, right? How do you help people not only with like resume and LinkedIn and sort of cover letter stuff, but also how do you help people develop grit and persistence and empathy and teamwork and all those sorts of things. So There's some companies that are doing like online versions of this. I think they're not great, but that's a big open area that needs to happen. Second is sort of what I'd say purpose and motivation development, which is, in other words, before people can really put themselves like fully into a training program and fully into using online courses, they need to have a strong sense and understanding of like, why are they doing it, right? If they don't know why they're doing it, they don't have a sense of purpose or motivation, which is especially common among young people, right? People who've dropped out of school and don't have a sense of direction or purpose, then they're going to fail. They're much more likely to fail. And they're not going to be able to, their eyes will glaze over when they go to an online course. This is less true, obviously, if you have a family you're trying to feed and, you have that clear sense of purpose and meaning, like, no problem. But for those who are lacking that. Third is sort of like a bunch of the industries that aren't always talked about. So people talk about coding all the time and like digital skills, like what we're doing, but there's huge opportunities in other areas. There's opportunities in trucking. There's opportunities in nursing. There's opportunities in manufacturing that I think are often forgotten by a lot of startups. So if you wanted to apply income share agreements to trucking training programs or to nursing or manufacturing or what have you, you could probably make a huge business. And then finally, synchronous online. So, there are, well, I guess I'll just pop into this next thing. So basically made this quick and dirty little chart here, but you have asynchronous online, which is like Coursera, right? And sort of MOOCs and Udacity and edX, those different companies, where you're taking an online course and it's not live, right? You can just kind of go on at any time. And then there's there's learning gyms like Shift Up, where you can kind of do the self-paced thing, but you're in person. There are synchronous in-person options. Those are boot camps and workshops. But then there's this other area of online synchronous, which doesn't really exist all that much, right? So some of you, yes, there are online boot camps, that's true, and some of them do synchronous online. But outside of the boot camp use case, like some of you may know about Peloton, the exercise company, right? Like where you can kind of do a live synchronous like exercise class on a bike. That doesn't really exist right now for education in the non-boot camp sense. So I think there's a big opportunity there as well. All right, I think we're almost done here. It's a lot of talking. Cool. So recapping again, your 3 takeaways. The future is blended. We're creating a network layer of learning gyms. Let's see, hold on, somebody's hitting me up in the chat right now. Yep, we're almost done here. And then some of the biggest opportunities we just talked about. Cool. And I know this is somewhat dry and I'm like kind of exhausted, but these are a lot of fun too, right? You want to go to a learning gym because you can have a good time, get to hang with your friends, get to chill, get some food, get some drink, and enjoy yourself, which is really what this is about. So this is a real picture from our learning gym when we're live, and come have a blast. So we're unfortunately not going to be open for some time in person, but with that, thank you for listening.